the Canary Investigations UK editor Emily Apple. Thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So there will be 3 days of protest on the 11th to 13th of June G7 meeting. Can you give us some more information about the Resist G7, what you have planned for the G7? We will hear the details from you.
So the Resist G7 coalition is made up of a variety of local, national and international groups who've come together to resist the G7 and say that we want an alternative model to the model of global capitalism presented by the G7. We've got 3 days of protests planned. On the 11th of June, we've got a day of action for climate justice and to demand action on the climate crisis. And that's being led by the youth with a climate strike in Falmouth. Then on the Saturday, we've got an internationalist day of action where we're linking all our struggles together and to show that the G7 operates in the interests of the richest countries in the world and ignores the poorer countries, and that isn't equitable, and that's not the world we want to live in. So that's happening in Hale in Cornwall on the Saturday. And then on the Sunday, we've got a day of resistance against surveillance and repression. So Kill the Bill Cornwall, who've been campaigning against the police crime and sentencing bill that's currently going through Parliament. It's called a mass demo on the Sunday. So we've got those sort of 3 days of action planned.
Thank you. Why do you think it's important for individuals to protest the G7 meeting, and why are the Resist G7 also supporting the Kurdish Freedom Movement as well?
So it's important for us to be resisting the G7 because it is about maintaining global capitalism, it's about maintaining the interests of the world's richest countries, it's about maintaining arms sales, it's about keeping everyone in their place while the rich get richer, and that's not the world we want to see. The Kurdish Freedom Movement is part of that resistance generally. In terms of what we're doing, we're inspired by the revolution in Rojava. And even like looking at the days that we've organised, sort of putting ecology, putting the youth, putting all these things at the centre of what we're doing is very much sort of inspired by the Kurdish Freedom Movement, but also in terms of what we want to create, because it's not just about resisting a summit, it's about saying what world it is we want to see instead of the G7. And so sort of looking at the ideas of Ocalan, looking at democratic confederalism, looking at the worlds that we can build instead is incredibly inspiring. So from that point of view, we're very supportive and inspired by the Kurdish Freedom Movement. But we're also sort of standing in solidarity with the repression that Kurdish people are facing both in Bakur, in Syria, and across the region.
Thank you. There is also concerns growing about Turkey and Turkish regime's Erdogan. Do you think Erdogan should be joined G7 as well? Let's start with that one.
No, absolutely not. I mean, obviously Turkey is a NATO member, and that, I mean, NATO is awful in itself, but Turkey being a member is absolutely shameful. Erdogan is nothing more than a fascist dictator at this stage. The repression that he is inflicting on the people in Bakur, the fact that so many journalists have been locked up, lawyers have been locked up, nothing that Erdogan is doing represents anything to do with democracy and freedom. The UK would rather sell him arms and make money from the Turkish state than it would support Kurdish people. And the bombings that are being carried out in Syria as well mean that there is nothing but repression, there is nothing but violence from Erdogan. He wants to destroy Kurdish communities, he wants to destroy the Kurdish identity, and there is absolutely no way that he should be allowed to join the G7.
Despite the Brussels High Court decision about the PKK is not a terrorist organization, why do you think UK still keeps the PKK on the list? And do you think it's behind the scenes is because of the economical relations with the Turkey?
I do, absolutely. I think the only reason why the PKK remains a listed organisation is because of the amount of money that the British government makes through arms sales to Turkey. They would much rather have that economic relationship than actually care about human rights. And it is absolutely disgusting. The PKK should be delisted. And, you know, the people who are allies to countries like the UK and the US in the war against Daesh are still being listed as terrorists, and that is absolutely disgusting. And it is purely economic on the grounds of the UK government.
And another very important issue is about Kurdish leader Mr. Abdullah Ocalan is under isolation for a long period of time now. Why do you think Erdogan is still and Turkish regime is still applying this pressure and isolation to Mr. Öcalan in İmralı prison? Do you think this has a relation with the closure of the HDP and the HDP MPs, that they are being under pressure as well, so their immunities has been cancelled? What do you think all this pressure is related to each other? How related this is related with each other?
I think it's all very related. And I should have said that earlier in terms of sort of what Erdogan is doing and why he's so unsuitable to be part of any sort of process is what's happening with HDP in Turkey, and to completely try and ban the major opposition party, Kurdish people, is just disgusting. I think Erdogan is scared of the Kurdish freedom movement. I think the West is scared of the Kurdish freedom movement as well, and I think that doesn't help as well, because in terms of the repression, because they are scared of those ideas, and the ideas that we find inspiring are also the ideas that scare them, because they challenge the basis of global capitalism. They challenge the fact that this has to be the way that we live, that we can't have an alternative. So I think it's very, very related. And again and again and again, we call for the end of the isolation of Ocalan, that has to end, that he has to be allowed access to his families, to his lawyer, and that he should be released.
Dear Emily Apple, the Canary Investigations UK editor, thanks for joining us. Thank you for your valuable comments today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.